Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. This is the latest grinder to come out from Metabo. It's 18 volt, brushless, and made in Germany. Now we've gotten a lot of requests to test Metabos since starting our cordless grinder dyno series where we pit these tools head to head. But sometimes that made in Germany essence sprinkled on tools some guys don't mind paying for isn't always something we can measure out of the box on a new tool. So while Metabo is known for their angle grinders, is that for like quantifiable things? Or can other brands like Milwaukee, DeWalt, Rigid, and today's new entries from Ryobi and Kobalt do the same thing for less coin when it comes to speed, power, runtime, vibration? Let's find out. And for the lowest price in the day and rounding out, I think, all of TTI's offerings on the channel now, is this, the Ryobi HP Brushless Angle Grinder PBLAG01. And I say lowest price, but it's sort of like barely. Depending on how you package this thing, it's only $199 as a kit, and that kit even includes their new gen high performance 4 amp hour battery, which is a nice thing to see. But potentially what we'll need here is the 9 amp hour battery to get the kind of power and runtime it needs to keep up with the other models we've tested. And that takes this from being well under a Harbor Freight Hercules in price, kitted out, to decently over one at $310 as tested. We'll score it with what it does best with. Since buying and testing these things, Ryobi has announced a new 21700 cell battery line in 8 amp hour and 12 amp hour sizes for the first time. So should this grinder be a power hungry tool that prefers larger batteries, we'll probably use this guy and a few other Ryobi tools to test those new batteries versus all these other options that they offer as well to really see what the difference is at the end of the day between these things. Now that club foot of a 9 amp hour battery doesn't help it much in the balance or weight of the thing. At 6.4 pounds, that ties it as the heaviest 4.5 to 5 inch grinder yet. Let's see if that's good for some performance. Our first test is speed under load. A 200 watt load is put on these tools, which is sort of like a normal boring grinding job to see if it's going to be doing that job at a good pace for you. Under load, the Ryobi is spinning at 7,140 RPM, which is pretty good. I think most people would be very happy with that amount of material removal rate. Using the kit included 4 amp hour high performance, that drops quite a bit though, around 6,450, the largest drop we've seen from a change in batteries like that. Our next grinder on the day has been requested very often, more than I would have assumed, the Kobalt 24 volt brushless. Maybe you guys who own these know something we don't, which is always an effective carrot on a stick for us. This is the lowest tool only price on today's episode at $130 bare. So if you already have Kobalt batteries, this might be a sweet low hanging fruit for you if it makes the beans. To make those beans, we'll have the 4 amp hour ultimate output battery we used on most Kobalt tools, and since in this series grinder power and of course runtime often benefit greatly from pumped up batteries, we also bought their newer 8 amp hour 21700 cell ultimate output as well. Excited to see what it can do, but it also increases this to a kit price of $316 as tested. And as a 24 volt tool with those 2 extra cells, it's going to start on the back foot here, weighing in at 6.7 pounds, making it the heaviest grinder setup we've tested and the biggest hole in the points to climb out of with performance. And our first stop to see that performance is speed under load. The Kobalt brushless makes 5,950 RPM under a normal grinder load, the lowest we've seen in the category. Under the same amount of pressure on the tool, you're going to be removing material slower using this grinder, it seems, so far. Okay, and for the main event, if for no other reason than it's $470 as tested and already tops there, the new Metabo WVPB 18LT BL11-125 Quick. This is their latest hotness and an 11 amp cordless replacement for their even more popular corded grinders, something we'll be able to double check for you today. To get the most out of this tool as well, we bought Metabo's latest 8 amp hour battery, which is also not the cheapest thing in the world, a common theme for this brand, but should help it to compare to a lot of the heavy hitters we're going to be putting on screen. The new Metabo comes with some cool features like the battery rotation lock here. You can orient the bulky battery away from you, away from stuff around you, or away from the project you're grinding on beneath the tool. And it's already at an angle, so basically the opposite of what the Ryobi's doing, that only protrudes down. This is at an angle and a couple different angles to choose from. It's pretty smart. It comes with an RPM dial like many of their tools, which you guys have pointed out is good for other types of lower RPM attachments and polishing type tasks. The dust filters are easy to remove, to blow out and reinstall, and the paddle switch, something I usually don't prefer on grinders. This is the best one so far, the least annoying and most seamless safety switch here. It feels very natural to just pick this thing up and start grinding. This has several other tidbits like a clutch if it gets bound up, and overheat cooling management, which we'll be pushing, but let's see more quantifiable things now. Now it's easy to get carried away with the oohs and ahs of a German-made tool, but does it bring the beans? The new Metabo under a 200 watt load like the other saw makes 8,150 RPM. Damn. Free speed is cool, but speed under a load is where the rubber meets the road, and this is the fastest grinder we've ever tested. Even if for some reason this doesn't make the sauce when maxed out, under normal tasks, this is going to grind through a lot of material in a short amount of time. Good stuff. So what does happen when you max these tools out? It's not an uncommon thing for us to do around here. Your mileage may vary, but if this 560 watt max Hercules as we measured it made 760 watt instead, the extra headspace would sometimes get used. Up first is the Ryobi. We task these tools with an increasing load up and up until they stumble in RPM and fall below 4,000 RPM, around half their free speed, or just cut off, which is more common. The Ryobi makes quite a bit of sauce, all said, and with that 9 amp hour battery is able to make it to 620 watts. At that point, it can't stay there or any further without cutting out. That in itself, I don't find all that interesting compared to these. What's interesting to me is that the heart, also a TTI made tool and something many people call Ryobi in Walmart white, also makes, yeah, you guessed it, 620 watts on the nose. Now, is that coincidence? Maybe, if it weren't for the fact that the heart makes 7,160 RPM under load with their largest 6 amp hour pack, and the Ryobi made 7,140 RPM under load, essentially the same. The only thing separating these two is that the 4 amp hour battery on the heart still made 550 watts, which is a lot, enough to convince us to later buy their larger battery. The Ryobi, on the other hand, makes 430 watts, which is a bit sad. Those slide-in terminal connections on the batteries do have some type of advantage, it seems. It's able to match the heart exactly when using an extra of 18650s for more money on the tool and battery. This has some work to do to get back on our good side. On to some 24 volt fun though. Here's the Kobalt seeing how much it can squeeze out. The Kobalt, despite starting much lower in RPM, is also affected a lot less by load increases due to that resulting torque, and basically also because it's, well, a powerful tool, is able to make it up to 640 watts, which I'd call quite good. If you chose to use the 4 amp hour 21700 cell battery instead, for size and weight reasons, that would result in 490 watts, which is a decent downgrade. Not that all grinding jobs require max beans though, let's be realistic. At $470, call me old-fashioned, but I'd like to see some good old German grunt from this one. Superior engineering should translate hopefully into less bogging down when you lay into a tool like this though, right? And well, I have to say, it's a damn ripper. This thing piles on 660 watts before it hits the free speed of some of the grinders we've bought here. It's bonkers. Slowing this thing down is not going to be an easy task on your day-to-day. The harder you push it, the more it seems to just not care. And this is on display as it eventually cuts out all the way up at 770 watts out of nowhere close to the RPM cutoff limit we test to. It really is a beast. Exactly how much of one? The Ryobi's power equates to a 9.5 amp corded model, not bad when using the 9 amp hour pack. The Kobalt, quite similar really, 9.5 amp comparable grinder. The Metabo 11 amp cordless model compares to a 11.5 to 12 amp corded grinder from all the corded grinders we've tested so far to compare to, which means either they are overrating this thing or their 11 amp corded grinders are just more efficient at making power, and so this compares best to those. In cordless though, efficiency is even more important because they run for so damn little time on a battery, and that can be really annoying. That's why we're happy to bring you runtime on these tools like you're unlikely to find anywhere else, both in minutes and revolutions on a load, a representation of amount of work done by the tool and something we feel is worth some points here for sure. The Ryobi, with its 9 amp hour battery being the only choice so far in a lineup we normally have 8 amp hour max, we figured we'd have to apply some calculator to keep things even. But luckily, Well, unluckily, if you own the tool maybe, that wasn't necessary. Both the tool and the battery surprisingly got too hot to function after 12.5 minutes. The battery itself, 135 to 140 degrees. The head of the tool, the same really, was 140, 145 in spots. 120, 125 is typical. This one could not be run back to back to start up again, so 12.5 minutes is what it gets. The Metabo with an 8 amp hour dies off next, although with much higher RPM along the way, we'll have to total that. Fully depleting the battery, the tool only got to 112 degrees at the head, barely registering over body temperature on the meter. And the Kobalt, yeah, a long time, though this one is also cheating by having 2 extra cells, and unlike measuring power where we just care about its top numbers, runtime is a measure of tool efficiency, how much juice it uses up, so we wanted to compare more like equal watt hours, not amp hours. Even so, the Kobalt is very efficient, and its 22.5 minutes becomes about 18 minutes on comparable juice. Very good, second highest we've tested, and also stayed pretty cool, 118 degrees, 120 degrees after all of that. That makes for 125, 180, and 145 points. Now for the amount of work done in that time, that's 36 points, 49, and 52. The Metabo again showing up strong here. Despite being less time on here, it's going to remove around the same amount of material or more. It seems it's just hard to beat in every darn category. Last up in those categories being vibration, this can often be a mark of a well-made tool. Some oddly don't vibrate much until you put a disc on them, and we use the same slightly worn then never used again discs for each tool. The Ryobi comes in with 21 meters per second squared with a 4.5 inch disc and 25 for a 5-inch disc. The best of the TTI tools really, possibly because of a big counterweight on its end. The Kobalt does around average, maybe better than average, with 29, and less vibration on the 5-inch disc with 21. The Metabo scores near or essentially matching records for these readings in both cases, with a whole 9 on the 4.5 inch disc and 12 meters per second squared on the 5-inch disc for a total of 21. So this is how everything works out with the new vibration scores, or rather penalties added in here. If you total all this performance up as a function of price tested, that's 118.8 for the Ryobi, 134.3 for the Kobalt, very good, they often do well in value scores I find, and 111.2 for the Metabo, its price obviously not helping it much here. That totals 487.2, 558.8, and 633.7, making the Ryobi virtually match the heart exactly. I always enjoy when our measurements pull up the curtains on this kind of stuff. These are essentially the same tools. The Kobalt placing in between the very good rigids due to redeeming qualities, good stuff on this one. And the Metabo just absolutely dominating. 633, look at the gaps here that were at the top. This is head and shoulders above the others, just basically at every stop. It's not heavy, it's smooth, stupid fast under load, nearly matching the most power we've ever tested, and is efficient at delivering that power on a charge, with a decent bit of features packed in that you won't find everywhere else either. This is how things look in our standings that ignore things like weight and price. Over here in performance alone, the DeWalt using a 9 amp hour flex volt pack is really holding on to the top spot. Metabo showing a solid second in both categories here, with smoothness on the right. Just a very good showing all around on this model. It's always great when the hype over build quality, design, power, made in Germany secret sauce actually translates into some quantifiable data that we can show for you on screen. This one's going to be a hard one to beat, but suggest models down below you think might give it a hard time. The Kobalt really, it's a $130 bare tool, is a major win as well. I feel when you don't hamstring it with equal watt hours, this thing is going to give you the better part of a half an hour of runtime as a package, and it would be one you'd probably be very happy with all set. Appreciate you joining us for this one. Click subscribe to catch us on the next one, as we post at least every Friday, and thanks for watching.